Alright guys, welcome back. My name is Raven. Today we are jumping into the Lovecraftian universe, Lovecraftian inspired universe with a game called Dagon. Let's just jump right on into it, guys. I'll see you there. Let's just get right. Dagon is a faithful interactive adaptation of H.P. Lovecraft's work focused on story and atmosphere. You will not find difficult choices, action sequences, or inventory management here, and movement is limited to progressing through locations along with the plot. Okay.
I am writing this under an appreciable mental strain, since by tonight I shall be no more.
Jesus, okay. This wallpaper, though. During the game, you'll encounter interactive elements. Some of them will allow you to continue your journey. Others reveal interesting facts about the original short story, its historical background, and author. Okay. Some of the trivia is hidden. In order to find these secrets, focus your eyes and look for an elder sign. Okay, you can also access all the found facts later. They will be available in the main menu.
Penniless, and at the end of my supply of the drug which alone makes life endurable, I can bear the torture no longer, and shall cast myself from this garret window into the squalid street below.
So we're a junkie and we're gonna commit suicide. Jesus. Okay. What's we got? Can we move around? No? Okay. What else are we looking for then?
Do not think from my slavery to morphine that I am a weakling or a degenerate. When you have read these hastily scrawled pages, you may guess, though never fully realize, why it is that I must have forgetfulness or death.
The voice acting's pretty great. Morphine, introduced in the 19th century and was routinely administered to treat severe pain during the American Civil War, 1861 to 65, and World War I, 1914 to 18. It was also sold without restrictions until 1914. Morphine became more popular after the invention of the hypodermic syringe around 1854. Friedrich Struner, who first isolated the substance, originally named it morphium after Morpheus, the Greek god associated with dreams. At the time when Dagon was published, morphine abuse, known as soldier's disease, already posed a big problem to the United States.
It was in one of the most open and least frequented parts of the broad Pacific that the packet of which I was supercargo fell a victim to the German sea raider.
Anything else that we can... Oh, right there. Lovecraft and the Great War. Dagon was written around a month after the United States entered World War I. Lovecraft was actively interested in its course. He composed many poems in which he gave encouragement to the soldiers and commented on the events unfolding in Europe. He tried to enlist in the army, which he mentions in one of his letters to Reinhard Kellner. Some time ago, impressed by my entire uselessness in the world, I resolved to attempt enlistment despite my almost invalid condition. I argued that if I chose a regiment soon to depart for France, my sheer nervous force, which is not inconsiderable, might sustain me till a bullet or piece of shrapnel could more conclusively and effectively dispose of me. Letters to Reinhardt. But even though he passed the physical exam, his mother prevented him from going to the war. She had threatened to go to any lengths, legal or otherwise, if I did not reveal all the ills which unfit me for the army. I am Providence, the life and times of H.P. Lovecraft. Okay.
The Great War was then at its very beginning, and the ocean forces of the Hun had not completely sunk to their later degradation. So that our vessel was made a legitimate prize, whilst we of her crew were treated with all the fairness and consideration due us as naval prisoners.
Huns were Central Asian nomads who established a dominion in Europe and invaded the Roman Empire in the 5th century AD. They were known as brutal, deadly warriors, masters of quick raids, who also developed powerful composite bows, lassos, and early siege weapons. During World War I, the British used the word Hun as a synonym for Germans in order to emphasize their brutality. However, the term originated when the German Emperor Wilhelm II gave a speech to his troops on the 27th of July, 1900, before they embarked to China.
So liberal, indeed, was the discipline of our captors that 5 days after we were taken, I managed to escape alone in a small boat with water and provisions for a good length of time.
Sure, we got nothing else to continue the story. So we escaped the ship.
When I finally found myself adrift and free, I had but little idea of my surroundings.
And we're lost at sea.
Never a competent navigator, I could only guess vaguely by the sun and stars that I was somewhat south of the equator. Of the longitude, I knew nothing, and no island or coastline was in sight.
So we're completely lost. Jesus, there's the moon. I think we can... Alright. It's beautiful.
The weather kept fair, and for uncounted days I drifted aimlessly beneath the scorching sun, waiting either for some passing ship or to be cast on the shores of some habitable land.
Assuming we're almost out of water. Yeah.
But neither ship nor land appeared, and I began to despair in my solitude upon the heaving vastness of unbroken blue.
So we're slowly
The change
starving.
happened whilst I slept. Its details I shall never know, for my slumber, though troubled and dream-infested, was continuous.
Jesus. I don't like it. I'm not about some tentacled horror, that's for sure. Alright then. I have a fear of water.
When at last
things
I
in it.
awoke, it was to discover myself half sucked into a slimy expanse of hellish black mire, which extended about me in monotonous undulations as far as I could see,
Jesus.
and in which my boat lay grounded some distance away. Though one might well imagine that my first sensation would be of wonder at so prodigious and unexpected a transformation of scenery, I was in reality more horrified than astonished. For there was in the air, and in the rotting soil, a sinister quality which chilled me to the very core.
This is already super gross. Like, look at that. Just,
The
ugh.
region was putrid with the carcasses of decaying fish, and of other, less describable things which I saw protruding from the nasty mud of the unending plain. Perhaps I should not hope to convey in mere words the unutterable hideousness that can dwell in absolute silence and barren immensity. There was nothing within hearing, and nothing in sight, save a vast reach of black slime. Yet the very completeness of the stillness and the homogeneity of the landscape oppressed me with a nauseating fear. The sun was blazing down from a sky which seemed to me almost black in its cloudless cruelty, as though reflecting the inky marsh beneath my feet.
It's written very well. Very, very, very descriptive. Alright, what's this? The origins of Dagon. Dagon seems to be inspired by Fishhead, a short novel by Irvin S. Cobb about unnatural affinities between a hybrid idiot and the strange fish of an isolated lake. And Lovecraft's dream about a strange island emerging from the ocean and him crawling in the ooze that covered its surface. I dreamed that whole hideous crawl and yet feel the ooze sucking me down. In Defense of Dagon by H.P. Lovecraft. Lovecraft's interest in the topics stemmed from his aversion to fish and sea smells. In his own words, I have hated fish and feared the sea, everything connected with it since I was 2 years old, but I cannot recall what earlier experience gave me such a profound, lasting aversion to the sea and seafood. I like seafood, but can't swim, and I'm terrified of the ocean and what's in it. I will wade into the water waist deep and no further. That's it. That's as far as I go into the ocean. And anything like that, like creepy crawly wise, I'm just not about. Ugh. Ugh, the squishy noise.
As I crawled into the stranded boat, I realized that only one theory could explain my position. Through some unprecedented volcanic upheaval, a portion of the ocean floor must have been thrown to the surface, exposing regions for which innumerable millions of years had lain hidden under unfathomable watery depths. So great was the extent of the new land which had risen beneath me that I could not detect the faintest noise of the surging ocean, straining my ears as I might.
Like the ocean's in... I don't think the ocean's anywhere. I think we're in like a pocket dimension.
Any seafowl to prey upon the dead things.
Nah, there's no gulls either, so... Try my best to find most of the secrets in this.
For several hours I sat thinking or brooding in the boat, which lay upon its side and afforded a slight shade as the sun moved across the heavens. As the day progressed, the ground lost some of its stickiness and seemed likely to dry sufficiently for traveling purposes in a short time. That night I slept but little, and the next day I made for myself a pack containing food and water, preparatory to an overland journey in search of the vanished sea and possible rescue.
Jeez. The moon over there, super pretty. Okay, no more secrets to be found. Let's keep going.
On the third morning, I found the soil dry enough to walk upon with ease. The odor of the fish was maddening, but I was too much concerned with graver things to mind so slight an evil, and set out boldly for an unknown goal.
So we set out.
All day I forged steadily westward.
The fuck are
guided by a
those?
faraway hummock which rose higher than
Bro.
any other elevation on the rolling desert.
That's not even close to any kind of creature I have ever thought about seeing. Okay, mountain. So we're heading towards the mountain. Oh, I don't like it. The weird spider crab legs, man. There's a washed up whale. Poor little fella. Okay.
That night, I encamped, and on the following day still travelled toward the hummock, though that object seemed scarcely nearer than when I had first espied it.
Seeing any more eldritch signs? We'll just keep on going. We have no choice, really, though. I mean, do we?
By the fourth evening, I attained the base of the mound, which turned out to be much higher than it had appeared from a distance.
Naturally. So we're going to scale the mountain to see what we can see, I'm assuming.
An intervening valley setting it out in sharper relief from the general surface. Too weary to ascend, I slept in the shadow of the hill. I know not why my dreams were so wild that night. But ere the waning and fantastically gibbous moon had risen far above the eastern plain, I was awake in a cold perspiration, determined to sleep no more.
Having terrible nightmares.
Such visions as I had experienced were too much for me to endure again.
There's something, causing us to have these dreams.
And in the glow of the moon, I saw how unwise I had been to travel by day. Without the glare of the parching sun, my journey would have cost me less energy.
Okay.
Indeed, I now felt quite able to perform the ascent which had deterred me at sunset. Picking up my pack, I started for the crest of the eminence.
So we're gonna climb at night. That's never a good idea. Okay. Well, oh, right here. Sign. Contrary to popular opinion, Lovecraft was not an ever-frowning, eccentric, grumpy loner. He considered himself to be a person who appreciated humor. Moreover, he would often meet with friends in his apartment or at various cafes in Brooklyn and Manhattan. At times, his social life was so intense, his work would suffer for months. There was a point when he finally decided he needed to put an end to the daily meetings and loitering in New York cafeterias and resorted to hiding at home and reading with the main room light turned off, pretending he wasn't there whenever a friend knocked on his door. He also had another method of deterring his guests, which involved greeting them in a bathrobe, with an unmade bed visible in the background and piles of papers scattered across the floor. Okay. So, you know, he was like me, just doesn't like going out. Okay. To get work done, essentially.
I have said that the unbroken monotony of the rolling plain was a source of vague horror to me. But I think my horror was greater when I gained the summit of the mound and looked down the other side into an immeasurable pit or canyon,
Okay.
whose black recesses the moon had not yet soared high enough to illumine.
Jesus.
I felt myself on the edge of the world,
I think we are on the edge of the world.
peering over the rim into a fathomless chaos of eternal night. Through my terror ran curious reminiscences of Paradise Lost, and of
Okay.
Satan's hideous climb through the unfashioned realms of darkness. As the moon climbed higher in the sky, I began to see that the slopes of the valley were not quite so perpendicular as I had imagined.
If there's anything else, so let's just get right on it.
Ledges and outcroppings of rock afforded fairly easy footholds for a descent, whilst after a drop of only a few hundred feet, the declivity became very gradual.
So I guess we're gonna climb our way down into the canyon. This is how we die. And then what
Urged on by an
resides?
impulse which I cannot definitely analyze, I scrambled with difficulty down the rocks and stood on the gentler slope beneath.
It's like there's monolith off in the distance right here, or a building or
gazing
something.
into the Stygian deeps, where no light had yet penetrated. An object that gleamed whitely in the newly bestowed rays of the ascending moon.
Okay. So it's a weird, like, obelisk or something.
That it was merely a gigantic piece of stone, I soon assured myself.
A perfect square, though.
But I was conscious of a distinct impression that its contour and position were not altogether the work of nature.
There was something found like this in the desert recently. I remember a bunch of YouTubers and stuff, they had to like fly out in a helicopter into the desert, and there was a big monolith like this right here, just randomly like in a canyon or whatever that people found. It was perfectly cut like that and everything. So that's
A
interesting.
closer scrutiny filled me with sensations I cannot express. For despite its enormous magnitude, and its position in an abyss which had yawned at the bottom of the sea since the world was young, I perceived beyond a doubt that the strange object was a well-shaped monolith, whose massive bulk had known the workmanship and perhaps the worship of living and thinking creatures.
100%.
Dazed and frightened, yet not without a certain thrill of the scientist's or archaeologist's delight, I examined my surroundings more closely.
Where exactly are we, is what I want to know.
The
It's a
moon,
pool of water.
now near the zenith, shone weirdly and vividly above the towering steeps that hemmed in the chasm. It
Bro.
revealed the fact that a far-flung body of water flowed at the bottom, winding out of sight in both directions and almost lapping my feet as I stood on the slope.
Okay. Just weird inscriptions of like fish and stuff on the monolith.
Across the chasm, the wavelets washed the base of the Cyclopean monolith, on whose surface I could now trace both inscriptions and crude sculptures. The writing was in a system of hieroglyphics unknown to me and unlike anything I'd ever seen in books. Consisting for the most part of conventionalized aquatic symbols such as fishes, eels, octopi, crustaceans, mollusks, whales, and the like.
Super interesting.
Several characters obviously represented marine things which are unknown to the modern world.
Yeah, these three at the bottom, 3 or 4 down here at the bottom, are not normal.
But whose decomposing forms I had observed on the ocean-risen plain. It was the pictorial carving, however, that did most to hold me spellbound.
Dagon contains many themes and storytelling methods that Lovecraft developed in his later works, such as telling the story through the carvings at the Mountains of Madness and the Nameless City, journals and characters' notes, the shadow out of time, and the Haunter of the Dark, islands emerging from the ocean called Cthulhu, or fictional beings and deities based on real-life events and mythologies. Migo in the Whisper in Darkness. It is also considered the origin of the popular Cthulhu mythos. Some of Lovecraft's other stories also include in a manner similar to Dagon, but let's skip the details in order to spoil it. Okay. Don't want to spoil that.
Plainly visible across the intervening water, on account of their enormous size, were an array of bas-reliefs whose subjects would have excited the envy of a doré. I think that these things were supposed to depict men, at least a certain sort of men. Though the creatures were shown disporting like fishes in the waters of some marine grotto.
Yeah, it's like weird fish people.
Or paying homage at some monolithic shrine, which appeared to be under the waves as well.
It's not under the waves anymore, because it's here, up top.
Of their faces and forms I dare not speak in detail, for the mere remembrance makes me grow faint. Grotesque beyond the imagination of a Poe or a Bulwer. They were damnably human in general outline, despite webbed hands and feet, shockingly wide and flabby lips, glassy, bulging eyes, and other features less pleasant to recall. Curiously enough, they seemed to have been chiseled badly out of proportion with their scenic background. For one of the creatures was shown in the act of killing a whale, represented as but little larger than himself.
Jesus. As big as a whale?
I remarked, as I say, their grotesqueness and strange size.
That's terrifying. Just the sheer size alone. Something like that big in the water with you? Like, no, I'm good.
But in a moment decided that they were merely the imaginary gods of some primitive fishing or seafaring tribe. Some tribe whose last descendant had perished eras before the first ancestor of the Piltdown or Neanderthal man was born.
Okay.
Awestruck at this unexpected glimpse into a past beyond the conception of the most daring anthropologist, I stood musing whilst the moon cast queer reflections on the silent channel before me.
I don't want to know what's in this water right here.
Then, suddenly, I saw it.
Oh, no. Fuck. There is something in the water.
With only a slight churning to mark its rise to the surface, the thing slid into view above the dark waters.
Jesus.
Vast, fiend-like and loathsome, it darted like a stupendous monster of nightmares to the monolith,
Holy shit.
about which it flung its gigantic scaly arms, the while it bowed its hideous head and gave vent to certain measured sounds. I think I went mad then. Of my frantic ascent of the slope and cliff, and of my delirious journey back to the stranded boat, I remember little.
So we ran back. Or we are running back.
I believe I sang a great deal and laughed oddly when I was unable to sing.
So we definitely lost it. Like we had a mental break seeing that thing.
I have indistinct recollections of a great storm sometime after I reached the boat.
Wow.
At any rate, I know that I heard pearls of thunder and other tones which nature utters only in her wildest moods.
Is it gonna flood? I'm assuming it's gonna flood.
When I came
No.
out of the shadows, I was in a San Francisco hospital,
Strange.
brought thither by the captain of the American ship which had picked up my boat in mid-ocean.
So we were rescued on our little boat.
In my delirium, I had said much, but found that my words had been given scant attention. Of any land upheaval in the Pacific, my rescuers knew nothing.
So they never saw the island.
Nor did I deem it necessary to insist upon a thing which I knew they could not believe.
Okay. Got a little bit of lore to read right here. What we got? The journalist Lovecraft was a prominent figure in the world of amateur journalism. In 1915, he started publishing his own journal called The Conservative, which included political and social commentary, poetry, short stories, and literary criticism written by him and other authors. Howard was a skilled wordsmith, but he also took criticisms to heart, which resulted in his decision to step away from writing poetry and concentrate on weird fiction again. For the first time since his teenage years, Dagon, published in 1919, is one of the short stories written during that period. In this example excerpt from The Conservative, the master of horror fiction explains his attitude towards warfare and the idea of world peace. While any sane human being can believe in the possibility of universal peace is more than the conservative can fathom. Should the entire civilized world agree simultaneously to disarm, one or more nations would undoubtedly retain secret armaments at the proper time, and at the proper time take advantage of their more altruistic and less astute contemporaries in a wild career of conquest against unarmed victims. No country is or ever can be above warfare until the basic impulses of the human animal shall have miraculously changed. Okay. So we're in the hospital. So do we dip out of the hospital?
I sought out a celebrated ethnologist and amused him with peculiar questions regarding the ancient Philistine legend of Dagon, the fish god.
Is that what we saw? Okay. Dagon, or Dagon, was the main deity of the Philistines, worshipped through the Middle East as the ancient god of fertility and crops. In Hebrew, the word Dagon was a common noun for grain. The rulers of the Akkad, Mesopotamia, chose him as the patron saint of their war conquest. He also appeared as the judge of the dead in the Orician poem, an underworld prison wanderer in one of the Babylonian texts. He is often mistakenly taken for a fish god due to the wrong interpretation of his name, as in Hebrew, the word dag means fish. In H.P. Lovecraft's works, Dagon is an underwater deity ruling over the deep ones, a humanoid race with fish traits that resides in the oceans. He is worshipped by a secret cult called the Esoteric Order of Dagon. So we're just stepping into cult territory here. Okay. Interesting. All about some
But
cults.
soon perceiving that he was hopelessly conventional, I did not press my inquiries.
Is that a Necronomicon there? Ooh. Okay. August Derleth and the Cthulhu Mythos. August Derleth was an American writer and anthologist. He's also befriended Lovecraft and published many of his works through his company, Arkham House. Although he greatly contributed to the popularization of the author's works after his death, he is surrounded by numerous controversies. One of his most questionable decisions involved introducing the good versus evil doctrine. Derleth was a devout Catholic to the Cthulhu mythos, which contrasted with Lovecraft's view of the world and his approach to cosmic horror. As a result, the author's works are often misunderstood and misinterpreted in today's culture. It is also worth noting that Lovecraft was never really interested in creating a mythology, and the term Cthulhu mythos was coined by Derleth after the author left the mortal plane. Anything else we can look at before I... Hold on. Okay. Let's get this real quick. The Marketer. Lovecraft's attempts to find a job in 1925 were influenced by his advice he received from friends. Among others, he started freelancing for a marketing magazine where he would write announcements and commercials. Feel free to judge his copywriting skills for yourself. And then it has a little passage right there. Okay, I'm not going to read it though. Alright, let's continue on. So we can really click on okay, so we can leave. I wonder why it made us walk all the way over here then. Interesting. Okay, well, let's leave.
It is at night, especially when the moon is gibbous and waning, that I see the thing.
Jesus.
I tried morphine.
Even the morphine isn't working, like, to save him from the, like, delusions.
But the drug has given only transient surcease, and has drawn me into its clutches as a hopeless slave. So now, I am to end it all, having written a full account for the information or the contemptuous amusement of my fellow men.
Here. Lovecraft on tobacco and alcohol. Lovecraft hated tobacco even though he used to smoke when he was 12 in order to look and feel like an adult. In his correspondence with his friend Reinhardt, he claims that he quit as soon as he started wearing long pants. He also had a very strong opinion about alcohol, as evidence in his letter to Zelaya Brown. Okay. So he wasn't a smoker or a drinker at all.
Often, I ask myself if it could not all have been a pure phantasm. A mere freak of fever as I lay sun-stricken and raving in the open boat after my escape from the German man of war. This I ask myself, but ever does there come before me a hideously vivid vision in reply. I cannot think of the deep sea without shuddering at the nameless things that may at this very moment
I don't
be
like it.
crawling and floundering on its slimy bed.
Oh, I don't like it, man. It's hard telling what's in that water.
Worshipping their ancient stone idols and carving their own detestable likenesses on submarine obelisks of water-soaked granite.
Jesus. It's hard to say.
I dream of a day when they may rise above the billows to drag down into their reeking talons the remnants of puny, war-exhausted mankind. Of a day when the land shall sink and the dark ocean shall ascend amidst universal pandemonium.
Oh, dude. They're out there, just in the water. Anything else? Nope. Okay.
The end is near.
The fuck is that noise? Oh no, they're at the door. Bro. They're coming for me.
I hear a noise at the door, as of some immense slippery body lumbering against it.
No.
find me.
Bro.
God, that hand!
Oh no.
The window! The window!
Oh, we jumped. We wouldn't let it get us. Thank you for playing. We hope you enjoyed immersing yourself in our little pool of cosmic horror. We would appreciate it if you took a moment to rate Dagon and check us out in our other... Alright guys, that is all the time we have today. A nice little point-and-click story adventure for us from the works of H.P. Lovecraft. That was Dagon. Thank you for dropping by. Don't forget to like and subscribe. As always, you guys have been wonderful. My name is Raven, and I will see you all in the next video.